Hi, my name is Mikey Smith. I'm the Student Ministry Director here at Trailside. Thanks for stopping by. We hope that by the end of this message you feel encouraged, that you feel closer to Christ than you've ever did before, and that through its message you will want to be more like Jesus every single day. Enjoy the message, and thanks for stopping by.
We've had our fair share of things happen here. We walked in on Saturday a few weeks ago, and there was water pouring from the ceiling in the back hallway, and that was a week after we had seen water pouring from another place down a wall in the back hallway. And so I've kind of gotten to a point where when I see water spots and things on the floor, I'm like, oh no. But I'll tell you what, there were a ton of little footprints down the hallway that were wet, and there's nothing better than seeing that kind of wet spots in the hallway when you get to see people be baptized. That was just the coolest thing ever, and I'll never get over it. So, sorry, that was my personal moment that I needed to have with me in front of everyone. So, I guess we did that. Hey, before we dive in, I want to tell you really quick, we're very excited because we, I guess now, are announcing we're going on a marriage retreat in February, which is going to be really incredible. I want you to go ahead and start putting some money away for it. There's more details coming in the next few weeks, but here's what I can promise you. It's not going to be like your typical marriage retreat. It is for married couples. So, sorry, kids, you can't come. Obviously, that'd also be really weird to watch your parents kiss, but there we are. All right, somebody's with me. But we're going to go and celebrate without a lot of super intense classes. We're just going to go and spend a weekend and worship Jesus together and have a really great time. And I just got news for you. The place we're going, I'm not ready to announce yet, but if for nothing else, you should go because you will never be able to stay at a place this nice for this cheap ever again. But it's going to be really incredible. We're going to go for a whole weekend, a caravan back here for church on Sunday. It's going to be awesome, and that's all I'm going to say about it right now. But it's going to be the end of February, so get ready. More details coming on that. So I'm going to start with a joke today. Is that cool? You guys good with that? All right, good. Halloween was this weekend. If you lived in my neighborhood, it was last night. For some reason, I don't know why. I guess kids can't stay up late enough to go Halloween trick-or-treating when the sun goes down at 7:30. But I thought maybe this would be a good opportunity to throw a little fun Halloween joke at you. So here's what it is. Photographer goes into a haunted castle, right? He's hanging out. He wants to get a picture of a ghost on Halloween because that's when you do that kind of thing. And so he turns out he finds a ghost. He encounters him, and the problem is he's really nice. He's like Casper, just a really kind ghost. He's really friendly. And he doesn't have to catch him coming through a shadow. He just says, hey, I'll be happy to pose for you. So the photographer's pumped, excited. He's like, gets him ready, gets all the lighting just right, and snaps a photo. Guy goes home, and he's excited. He's like, man, I'm going to get famous. People are not going to believe I have a real picture of a real ghost. I'll never have to work a day in my life again. And he puts it on his computer, and he finds out the photos are too dark, and it's nearly blank. And the biblical moral of this story is that sometimes the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. So, there it is. There you go. There you go. Yeah. That's more for Nathan Wilkie, because I know he'd enjoy that so much. Yeah, it's good. It's good, right? The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I'm so sorry I did that. But, man, hey, I'm so excited getting off of that. I'm so excited to share this next season with you guys. Today we start our brand new series called 8 Days. And if you can believe it, this series is going to end on the Sunday before Christmas. Not because it's a super long series, but because, y'all, Christmas is almost here. I don't know if you noticed, but November is yesterday. 2 days ago, actually. Is that bananas to anyone else? Yeah, I remember just like praying for school to start, right? Like the depth of my prayer was me on my knees sobbing, like, please let my kids go to school. I don't have anything left in me. Lord, please. Now we're coming up on Christmas break when I'm going to do the same thing. No, but I'm so excited to start this series because the kind of hope was instead of having a typical like Thanksgiving series, we talk about what we're really thankful for, and then Christmas, and we talk about the spirit of giving, like give to the church, give to this, and then you can give Christmas. I just thought maybe that's a little overdone, and so we're going to take this next 8 weeks, and we're going to instead talk about what it means when you're waiting on God. Like, what does it mean to actually wait on God, right? Because we have this idea of plans and what we want, right? We go to Burger King, we get it our way, or Wendy's if you're smart, because it's delicious. Wow, okay. That was a stronger response than I anticipated. Yeah. But I felt really hard-pressed as I was praying. I felt really hard-pressed as I was praying last few months. What is going on? We okay? It's the Lord. Whoever said that first, repent. That's the first thing you should do. No. All right, I think we're good. I felt really hard-pressed as I was praying to take our church through this idea of the Exodus, because everything we've done has been waiting. You know, in our church's history, when we started the idea of planting a church, we had to wait. It was like a year-long process. And then we were at a CrossFit gym, and it was really cold, and we were waiting. And then we had to go to a middle school. And let me tell you, you want to learn about provision and patience and waiting? Plant a church at Northwest Middle School. I was waiting, more so waiting for God to say stop, or waiting for people to come, or waiting for the heat to be on. Any of those things we were waiting for. Those are funny, but also true stories. But I think what I really felt like we needed to be talking about was what that wait looks like, and the hardship and the joy in that waiting. Because we've got this idea in Christendom that when God is moving, it's just really easy to get in the car. It's like you just sit in the car and he's already got the keys going, and all you got to do is put it in drive and he'll take you where you need to be. And I don't think that's what it means. I don't think that's necessarily how God really works. Sometimes he does it, it's great, right? Like when you can see the exact pathway God has you on, then you're going to be pumped. It's like, okay, this is awesome. I'm ready, I'll take these steps. But sometimes it gets really hard, or sometimes God starts it and then stops you. And it feels kind of like spiritual whiplash, because things are going really well and then all of a sudden they're not. And I don't know that we've talked enough about how to walk through that. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about waiting for Jesus as we celebrate the coming of Jesus. And so I thought in order for us to celebrate our first Christmas Eve service, it'd be really good to know what it's like to anticipate that. Because, yes, this Christmas Eve, we will have our first Christmas Eve service, which is going to be super fun. And we're going to laugh a lot, and it's just going to be a good time, and I hope you're ready. We're going to sing songs. I have a pretty scary vision. I'm going to give the whole staff tomorrow about it, but it's fine. But it's going to be a great time. And we actually get to celebrate Christmas Eve this year. We didn't get to last year, so I'm pretty pumped about that. But as we walk through this Exodus and this idea of waiting on God, we can kind of find ourselves in the same vein as the people of Israel who are waiting for a Messiah. So I thought that'd be fun. And I'm not against the Christmas season. Like, I don't want you to be up here and be like, well, it's Christmas, you know, like where's all the candy canes, and you know, what are we going to do? Why aren't we seeing Christmas carols yet? Like, I want you to know I don't hate Christmas. I actually love Christmas in the proper timeline. And those of you who have begun celebrating Christmas, y'all need to chill. Let's have Thanksgiving first. But, man, we're talky this morning. Everybody's on me. No, I'm not against it. I'm actually all about Christmas and capitalism. Like, I'm okay with that. I don't, Sam, I don't mind what Starbucks puts on their cups. Their mission is not to love Jesus well. It's to give kind of okay coffee at large capacities. In fact, one of my most favorite things to do is on Black Friday. I'm the guy who will go out on Black Friday. And it's not to buy things. It's because it's hilarious. And all the places you've heard, like, hey, don't go to this place, those are the places to go. Like, go to the Walmart in the sketchy area. It is incredibly funny. I went there to get a TV last year. It was awesome. Because people weren't fighting over TVs, they were fighting over socks and DVDs. You ever seen people fight over like 35-cent socks? It is amazing. Incredible. But I love that. I love going out and like seeing the plan come to fruition. Where you have that one mom who's a little more hardcore than the other moms that are hanging out with her, but they know that she's going to get the job done, right? So she develops this plan with a full like line board, and she's like, you'll go here, Susie, to the electronics department. Bobby, you're going to go to the sports section. We need new fishing poles. I love seeing that mentality come. My very first day working in the retail business was at Best Buy. on Lawrence Road. Anybody remember those days? Anybody out there? Me? Okay, good. So it used to be on Lawrence Road. Thank you. My very first day at Best Buy, I had 1 day of training, and I was a cashier on Black Friday. Yep. And this is like 1998, so internet it existed, but not in the way it does now. Y'all, we had a line. We opened up at, I think, 5 a.m., and we had a line at midnight. I had to get there at 2:30 and sat at a register for 2.5 hours. And I want to tell you, I cried and laughed. I felt like I was at a tragedy on Broadway with all my emotions doing this. But it was the funniest thing ever. I'll never forget, there was a guy who tried to hide a desktop computer in his cart under candy, just full thing of candy, and thought like, I'm not going to scan all that candy. And then was amazed when I actually went in and found the computer, and he was like, oh, I don't know how that got there. I'm like, bro, you put it there and tried to steal it. That's how we got there. I just love all of that exists. So I'm a big fan of that. But what's interesting is you also see kind of the worst in people in those moments as well. And you know what the whole thing is all bent around? Jesus. And waiting. That's why we celebrate Christmas. Like it's when we celebrate Jesus coming. That's what we do. And people are fighting over underwear. That's not something you want to see on a Thursday. But we do. And so, in having this idea of what we want to talk about, what we want to get to in this whole plan of 8 days, I think the important thing is understanding that God's plan is a good plan, even when it's not your plan. And so, these 8 days we're going to talk about is just that. One of my favorite things about the Exodus that you never hear is that when the people got out of Egypt and then went to the mouth of the river, do you know what God said? Anybody? He told them to wait. They were at the mouth of the river right at their deliverance, and God said, stop, camp. Now, I hate camping, so I already would have fought God on this, but it's true, I just do. If you ask me to go hiking, I will lovingly tell you no and invite you to coffee instead. So, but it's not just that he told them to wait and camp. Do you know how long they had to wait? 8 days. That's where we got, you guys seeing the connection now? Yeah, there it is. Light bulbs everywhere. If I was better, I would have had you like pop the lights up here in that moment, but yeah. 8 days where we got that. That's as bright as I go. That's fine. But there it is. That's because he's mad at me about not having my microphone on. But what do you do when God is has you at the point of deliverance and readiness, and he says, stop, wait. He says, I'm going to leave you here for 8 days so that you can watch Pharaoh and your enemies pursue you and get closer and closer and closer to overcoming you, and then God says go. So we're going to talk about those 8 days. And Exodus is, God is ready to bring his people out of Egypt, and he says, wait. So in order to get to that point, we're going to be in Exodus 4 this morning, right at the very start. So if you have your Bibles, you can go there. It's the second book of the Bible, so it's on the very front end, or if you have our app, which you should download because it's much easier. We have sermon notes in it as well. You can go there as well. But this is what's happening while you're getting there. The first step of waiting on God is receiving the call. And so we want to talk about what it means to receive the call. And so in Exodus 3, there's this very famous scene known as Moses and the burning bush. Anybody heard of that before? Yeah, so Moses is hanging out. All of a sudden there's this bush on fire, but it's not being consumed by the fire. So Moses is like, I'm going to go check that out because that's weird. I guess it's like the train wreck of his day, right? So he goes and the Lord meets him and says, hey, where you are is holy ground. Take off your shoes. Don't come any closer. You can hear my voice from here. I have something for you. And in Exodus 2, God's people have been waiting for 430 years. The king of Egypt has just died, and the people are complaining, and they're saying, get us out of this slavery. Get us out of this death camp. And God hears their crying and then sees Moses. And in chapter 3, This is what he says right at the end of chapter 3. No, I'm sorry. I lost my place. How about that? It's okay. I'll just say what it is. So, totally lost my place. So God actually sees Moses, who is a shepherd at the time, a pastor's kid at that. His father-in-law was the head priest of Midian. And God picks him and says, Moses, I want you to go and deliver my people out of Egypt. You guys may have seen or heard the song, Let My People Go. Anybody heard that? We with me? Let my people go. Anyone? Some of you sang it, yeah? Some of you were in those plays back in the 90s where nothing goes right and trees fall. And so Moses is keeping this flock, and God calls Moses and says, hey, I want you to be faithful and to go let my people out. Go lead them out. And so in this moment, the thing we need to understand as we look forward in this is that what God does is that God uses normal people to fulfill his most extraordinary plans. And if you're maybe waiting on God, the first thing to know is that it might be he's already told you what to do and he's waiting on you to take the first step. But Moses, being a person, being scared, being a simple shepherd, a pastor's kid, scared. If you guys ever felt like you had a clear vision or like the Lord laid something on you, or maybe not, you just felt like it was what you were supposed to do, but it's incredibly terrifying. Anybody been there? Yeah, I got news. You're sitting in one. But Moses is just watching sheep doing what he's supposed to do, doing what his family line would lead him to do. And God puts a burning bush out there and uses it to say, Moses, I want you to do one of the most incredible things that people are going to know in the history of time forever. But when God calls us those things, it's because he's waiting on us to be obedient. And how many times have you guys heard or felt like you were waiting on God and you knew exactly what you need to do, but it was just really scary, and so you tried to argue your way out of it? Anybody done that? Anybody been stubborn with the Lord before? Yeah. So the very first part of chapter 3, he was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led them to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, also known as Mount Sinai. So that's where you are right now. That's where we are. And as this bush comes, Moses is drawn to it. And he receives this calling that is incredibly scary. That's incredibly hard. And I love what Moses does. Moses does what all of us do, which is why I think when you read the Bible, it's so wonderful because you can find yourself in it. Moses argues with God. Now, in my world, this was called fighting with your mom, because that's who she was in our house. And she was scary. And she would set things on fire if you needed them to. No, I'm just kidding. I want to see if anyone was awake because I know it's hot in here. Some of us are? Okay. But God calls Moses this thing, and the first thing Moses says, this first response in chapter 4, is that he can't do it. He says, but behold, they, God's people, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. So God calls Moses and says, listen, I want you to go to my people. I want you to tell them that you're going to bring them out of Egypt. And I want you to ask them to follow you. And Moses' first response is like, no, but they're going to say no. Like, they're not going to listen to me. I don't look like you. I don't sound like you. Fun fact, Moses was Egyptian. And he's like, if I go, they're not going to listen. Moses' first response is to say, I'm not good enough. His first response. And church, my question for you as we walk through this series, but as we start this morning is, if God has called you to something, to do something, to take steps that are maybe really, really hard, why is it that our first response is the same of like, listen, they won't believe me? What is God calling you to that you're actually disqualifying yourself for and saying, no, people won't follow me. I'm too young. I'm too new. Like one of my favorite things that happened this last week and a half, I was at the beach. That's not my most favorite thing, but it was a pretty good one. I was at the beach and I get this message that pops up that Kanye West has released a new album called Jesus is King. Yeah, I know you probably already heard the news, so I don't have to repeat that. That's Kanye West and Jesus is King. If you don't know Kanye, he gave us some great hits like Gold Digger, which I'm not going to sing. And now Kanye West is leading a church that has thousands of people coming to it and releasing an album about how Jesus is king and the gospel changes his life. And you know what the response of Christendom is? It's killing me. Do you know what the response is? It's a money grab. I literally had a guy who is not a believer at all, who responded because I put something up about Kanye West, and he was like, it's a cash grab. And then I had a girl who's a Mormon, which is fine, but she needs Jesus. So like, hey, I'm just waiting on Kanye to be like, hey, it's a cash grab. And I'm going, man, people just are so cynical. Here's Kanye saying like, man, Jesus radically changed my life. And people are like, nah, he's in it for money. It's not real. He doesn't really care. And I was like, okay, well, those are people who aren't believers. I get that. And then like 2 hours later, I get a message at like 11:45 at night from a guy who's another pastor and like 6 states away, who said, hey man, I love you, I'm your brother, which is always the first way that they're gonna like knock you down a few pegs or try to, you know? It's called the hamburger effect. You tell someone what you love about them and then the meat of what you're saying and then what you love about them so it doesn't hurt as much. Don't do that, that's the worst. And I know what you're doing, so you can't fool me. So, hey man, I love you and I'm your brother, and I'm like, great, because you haven't called or emailed or written me a message in 3.5 years, but it's fine. Things have changed a little bit. I just think it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous for you to talk about, you know, Kanye West and this new album and, you know, like that, you know, he might mess up. And I was like, yes, exactly. He might mess up. You're right. And I wrote back to him, and I was a little cranky. And I wrote back to him, and I was like, yep, I got news. I hope you don't mess up anytime soon. And that was it. And then I put on my wall, I hope Jesus doesn't define me the way he does Kanye, or condemn me, I think. I was like, that's exactly it. Because this guy who was a rapper who met Jesus has actually sat and said like, hey, listen, I don't care what you think of me. Jesus is king. And the gospel is real, and it changed my life. And our first reaction is to be angry toward him and to condemn him, when you know what the reaction of the angels in heaven is? They're singing songs. They might be singing Jesus is king. I don't know. Who knows? If I get up there and like, you're my Chick-fil-A, number one in lemonade, I'm okay with that. I've got news for you. But here's what Kanye West is showing us that we're doing a bad job of, not disqualifying himself. And yet we find Moses saying, what if they don't listen to me? They might. They might not. But man, Jesus is still king. And so, church, as we walk through this idea of calling, I'm going to push you to struggle really hard over the next few weeks with what God's calling you to. Because this is great, but it's not good enough. God has so much more in store for this place. And I'm going to push you. So get ready. But there are 4 things that I want you to remember as we consistently, purposefully walk through these ideas. And the first thing is this, is that your calling is your calling is created and given by God, not by other people. Exodus 3, we talked about this in verse 10. It says, come and I will send you, God speaking, I will send you to Pharaoh that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? And I love this. In chapter 3 and verse 13, I know I said 4, but we're going to get there. Then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? Remember, it's God that calls you. It's God that forms your call, not people. This is what God says. God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. This is so cool. This is what God actually says. If you go back in the Hebrew, it's Yahweh. They didn't use vowels, and they wouldn't even say the name of the Lord. And so God literally says that this is who he is. He says, I am who will be with you. So Moses says, hey, when I go and tell these people about the calling you gave me, and they say you're not real, what am I supposed to say? And God says, remind them that I am exactly who I always have been, and that I have not failed on my promise to them to deliver them, and you're who I sent. That's literally what happens in the context of the Hebrew. That's what he says. He says, I'm the God of the promise, and his promise is not to fail people. And it's this reminder that God is self-existent. He doesn't depend on anything or on us. It's that he is the creator, the sustainer. He is immutable. He is unchanging. His plan for you and for I and for Israel in this moment is that he is going to deliver on the promise because he is exactly who he says he is. And he is the person who gave Moses the call to bring the people to freedom. You guys follow that huge train there? Because your calling is created and given by God. And if anyone ever looks at you and says, hey, I have a calling for you, you need to run the other way. Because that's manipulation. But God puts calls into us. He gives us purpose and things that identify us, that change us. And he says, when people ask you about your call, your response is, God is who he is, and he's called me to this. That's why you do what you do. If anything you're doing right now is not because God called you to it, stop. Because when it's hard, when it's not easy, when people look at you and when they throw disdain your way, when they don't support you, when they lie to your face, you're going to have nothing to fall on except for what you think people wanted you to do, unless you are doing what God has called you to do. Because when God has called you to do it, it doesn't matter. And so when people say, who do you think you are? Who sent you? God tells Moses, tell them, I am who I am sent me. Second is this, and moving into Exodus 4. God reminds him of what he's supposed to do, and says, Moses answered, but behold, they will not believe me or listen to my voice, for they will say, the Lord did not appear to you. And the Lord said to him, what is that in your hand? I love that. Isn't that so good, man? Jesus does this in the Gospels all the time, too. People ask him direct questions. Like, hey, who's the greatest? He's like, look at this little kid over here. It's so frustrating. I just want a straight answer. Moses is like, listen, I'm going to go, and they're going to say, hey, you don't speak to God. There's no way God showed up to you, right? Disqualify him as a person. He's like, what am I supposed to do? And God goes, what are you holding? Second thing for us is that your calling is not validated by other people's opinions. Moses is scared more of what people might say than what God actually told him to do. Do you catch that? We're going to get into the staff here in a minute, but this is what Moses says to God. He goes, listen, they're not going to listen to me. Like, what do I do? What do I do when I look at someone and I say, I'm doing this because the Lord told me to? They're like, pfft. Do you know what that is, church? That's because that Moses is more scared of what people might say than what God has called him to do. Are you catching that with me? Anybody following? Because Moses is more scared of what people would say than what God told him to do. He puts more power in what people would doubt him to say than it is of what God actually said, this is what you should do. Does that drive anyone else crazy? Does that drive anyone else to a place where you're like, crap, that's absolutely me? Right here. Yeah. Because we're so scared of what people might think. You know when true relationship happens is when you stop worrying about what other people think because you know that they love you and care for you. So Moses says, what if they don't listen? They're going to look at me and they're going to say, there's no way. God doesn't speak to you. Do you know what that is? Let's blow a mind here. That's racism. That's what happens here. Racism happens here. Because Moses didn't look like Israel, y'all. Put an Egyptian up next to a Jew. Moses literally looks at them and says, hey, they're going to look at me and know I don't look like a Jew. I don't look like God's people. And they're going to go, there's no way God cares enough about you to speak to you. That's what happens. Racism happens. Is that crazy to anybody? Not like we see that in the church today, right? Anybody out there? I got a good friend here this morning who surprised me. It's an African-American pastor named Tim Pender. Tim, say hey to everybody. Hey, everybody. You ever experienced racism in the church, Tim? Never. Never, right? That's what Moses is scared of here, guys. Moses says, they're going to look at that guy and know he doesn't look like me and say, there's no way God can speak to him. He doesn't look like and sound like we do. God says, God doesn't answer in anger and say, well, let's give them a clear theological understanding of the purpose of people and creation and that I've breathed God, I've breathed my life into you and given you purpose. He says, what's that in your hand? He's going to use what Moses already has to fulfill his purpose. Doesn't matter what his skin looks like or what his voice sounds like or his heritage. He just says, I'm going to use what you have in your hand right now to do exactly what I need to do. And so God says, what's that? Moses goes, it's a staff. Remember, what did he do? He was a shepherd, right? It's a shepherd. Moses says, throw it on the ground. Or God says, throw it on the ground. Moses throws it on the ground. What happens? Turns into a snake. And the most level-headed thing I've ever read in any part of Scripture, Moses runs. Moses, I got you, dog. I'm with you. I understand. 100%. I'm in Moses' playbook right now. I'm gone. We had snakes last week. Well, that sounded weird if it's your first time. We had an animal rescue come and hang out in our kids' ministry last week, and there was a snake. We didn't have snakes here, all right? Let's be clear. Golly, I don't know what I'm doing. It's been great leading you guys. I'm out. Yeah. Moses runs the other way, and God says, hey, look, go grab it by the tail and watch what happens. Now, outside of God's leadership and purpose, grabbing a snake by a tail is a bad idea. You know what that does? It tells the snake where you are. You know what happens? It bites you. You die. I don't care. Maybe it's not venomous. In my mind, you die anyway. So, but God says, grab it by the tail and see what happens. Boom, turns into a staff. And he says, oh, here's another one. Put your hand in your coat. Pull it out. Bam, bright white. Put it back in your coat. Bam, normal again. And he actually does another one too, but we don't have time. But here's what happens is that when God calls you to something, he validates what your calling is, not other people. And he gives you the tools that you need to accomplish your calling. That's all you need to know. And sometimes it can be a staff in your hand. Sometimes it can be your hand. But you know what God does? He does two things. He shows Moses, he says, look, my call is good enough that you can follow it. And he also confirms it in him like, hey, you don't have to be good enough. Your purpose and called so I can use you. So know that I'm walking with you and watching out for you, which is why he shows him the staff in the hand. Because guys, God will not ever call you into something and leave you. He won't. You want to learn about provision? Plant a church, right? No, you want to learn about provision? Come to a point where you can't depend on you anymore and God has to show up for you because he says he will. See, we've told ourselves that it's all what's out there. It might just not be the staff in your hand that you need to get through your day. We've decided it's everything that they have instead. The third point is this: your calling is not defined by your personal gifting or limited by your shortcoming. Verse 10. So after all this, after God shows him 3 times, I know, I'm sorry, Megan, I'm going long. That was a joke. I said, I'm going to go for 20 minutes. And she said, yeah, right. Yeah, I was wrong. So after all this, Moses said to the Lord, my Lord, I'm not eloquent. Either in the past, I love this, either in the past or since we began speaking. Moses is like, hey, yeah, okay, I get it, the signs, whatever. I'm not eloquent. I wasn't then, and that hasn't changed since, we first started talking at this bush. Like, hey, God, nothing shifted in 20 seconds. Guys, man, this is why I love this story of Moses, because how many times have you been trying to do what it is God called you to? You do it one time, you're like, well, it didn't work. You know what that's akin to? That's akin to you being like, I'm going to go on a diet, have a salad at Outback, step on the scale, be like, nothing changed. I'm done with dieting. I shall die fat, happy, and with terrible cholesterol. It's the same thing. Guys, it is the same thing. Moses literally says, I'm not eloquent, and I wasn't before I met you, and in the 20 seconds we've been talking, I'm not either. Nothing shifted. He's totally impatient that God is doing something within him to bring change into the world, to this incredible plan he has for his people, this promise that his people have had for 430 years. Moses is like, yeah, I get that, the staff, the Nile going to blood, like the hand, but I don't speak real well. I'm like, Moses, come to TR. You get along with everybody else here. Just kidding, guys. It was a joke. Jeez Louise. So, well, I'm never coming back to that church. I don't talk good neither. That's okay. Another joke. He says, I'm not eloquent either in past or since you've spoken to your servant, and I'm slow of speech and of tongue. See, we do a good job when God says to do something of disqualifying ourselves and saying, that's not my gifting. I love the Enneagram, big fan. Helped me a lot. Come on up. Helped me a lot. But that's not a response for you, or a reason for you to be like, well, I'm a 2, so I just hate people. I had the 1. One hates people, yeah, but I'm a 2, yeah. Like my wife who's a 9, well, I'm a 9, so, worst case scenario is just how I think all the time. It's not an excuse. But that's what we do here. That's what Moses says. He's like, listen, I'm limited. I don't speak real well. I'm a simple shepherd. And then watch God's response. Then the Lord said to him, who has made Moses, or who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore, go, and I will be with your mouth, and I will teach you what you shall speak. See, Moses has a call, he has a purpose. God has shown and confirmed he's with him, and he says, but also, I don't speak really well. I'm slow. I'm not eloquent. Because he knows when he goes and speaks to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's going to be around all the most eloquent people. The brightest, the smartest, the best. And he goes, I can't compare to that guy. It's not going to work. He immediately compares himself. He's like, I'm not good, and I'm not as gifted as that guy, so my words are going to fall flat. And God's response, again, is you're thinking too small. Who made your mouth? Who do you actually believe God to be when he calls you to something? Who made your mouth? Who made your tongue? Who gives people deafness or muteness or the ability to speak and have eloquence? Who does that? But see, the problem is that Moses has determined that his limitation is God's limitation. And guys, when God calls you to something, it's not. That's not how it works. God is not limited by your limitations. Because here's an idea. He gave them to you. Not everyone gets to have this incredible body that I have. That was a joke, but thank you. It's a very slimming sweater. But God is not limited by your inability to speak well, or to give because you don't have much, or to serve because you don't like people that much. God is not limited by any of that. Instead, God says, who formed that part of you? Who gave you a tongue to speak? Who gave you a heart to beat? And don't miss this last thing this morning. Don't miss this. God will always give you what you need, not what you ask for. After all this, Moses' response in verse 13 is this. But he said, now it's just after God said, I formed the mouth. But Moses said, oh my Lord, please send somebody else. I don't know, please. I love that he just gets to a point where he's like, I got nothing left. Just please send somebody else. Because God says, hey, you're going to go. Hey, here's your staff. Hey, I'm going to speak for you. And Moses is like, all right, I don't have any reasons anymore. I don't have any excuses. I just don't want to do it. Please just send somebody else. And God, instead of being mad and saying no and forcing him to go, says the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses. And he said, is there not Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know he can speak well. Behold, he's coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. That's the best, isn't it? Like, hey, look, all right, I'm done. You're going to go. I'm going to send Aaron. I have great news for you. He just had a really good day. He's happy right now. So when you talk to him, know that, like, you know, he woke up on the right side of the bed. His dog came up. His house is clean. His bank account's full. He's very happy and healthy. Everything's going well. I put him in a good mood for you. He'll be glad in his heart, and you shall speak to him and put words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and I will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people. He shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand this staff from which you will do all the signs. See, church, when you are in a time of waiting, when you are waiting on God's calling, maybe it's just that you need to stop giving excuses and telling God you're not good enough, and trust that he's called you, he will equip you, he will be with you, and he will give you all you need to accomplish his will. And your whole goal, all you need to do is shut your mouth and say yes and be obedient. Maybe that's all you need. But church, as long as we allow our calling to be this egocentric, make me famous, give me all that I need, I want to be comfortable, have health and wealth and prosperity and gold. As long as that is your goal, then you are eliminating your own calling, and God is waiting on you to be quiet, shut up, and be obedient. There's 8 days, and this is only one. But church, you can't take step 2 if you don't take step 1. So my question to you as we close, as we get ready to celebrate the Lord's Supper, is this. What is God calling you to? And what have you instead been telling yourself so that you don't have to be obedient? I can't answer that for you, but you have already answered it in your own heart, because you know what you're not doing that God has called you to do. So my question is, what are you not doing that God is calling you to? And will you please stop bringing excuses and trust that God is going to call you? He's given you a call, that he's going to give you all you need and meet you. He is going to form your words and walk with you, and he will give you everything you need, not what you want, but what you need. And that he will still do his will.
We hope you enjoyed today's message, that you feel so encouraged by who God is and by who he thinks and knows you are as well. If you have any questions about our ministry or our church, you can check us out at trailside.church, find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also download our app from the iTunes or Android store. Thank you so much and have a great day.